Hi everyone, I'm Ian Harvey, massage therapist. Today we're going to be talking about myofascial release for posture. More specifically, this most common postural deviation that you'll see in your practice, which is hyperkyphosis, so too much convex curvature here at the thoracic spine, and rounded shoulders, otherwise known as medially rotated humerus and protracted shoulders, shoulder girdle. So we're going to talk about some strategy, the anatomy, and then we're going to do some massage. And finally, we'll end with a stretch that you can give your clients, which I found to be very effective. If you'd like to fast forward to the massage, you can click here. If you'd like to fast forward to the stretch, you can click here. So first of all, let's talk about strategy. We don't necessarily want to fix them. We don't want to change their posture too much. In fact, if they're pain-free and they don't care about their posture, maybe if it's not broke, don't fix it. If their posture works for their unique body, the way that it lives in gravity, then maybe there's no sense in trying to make too big of a change. Now, if they've got pain, if they got this upper back pain or these nagging neck problems, or even rotator cuff stuff can be involved, even headache. If they've got these chronic problems, then it's time to have a conversation about posture. Let them know that we're going to be making a small change. We're not going to get them from here to here. We want to get them from here to here. We want to get them out of that danger zone where all of these posterior thoracic muscles are so long and having to be so strong that they tend to go into spasm. So we want to get them from here just to a more neutral posture. And that's going to take several sessions, so have that conversation with your client, let them know what they can expect. And it's going to involve action on their part. It's going to involve them doing some work. So that stretch and maybe some foam rolling if you know enough about that to recommend it to your client. So what's tight here and what's long? The tight muscles are these pectoralis muscles. Pectoralis major, this big guy right here, and pec minor, this little guy right here. They're pulling forward. Something else that's probably tight are these anterior neck muscles. We're not going to be dealing with them a lot today, but I find that if we can lengthen all of this frontline fascia, then this follows. In fact, if we can get all of this opened up, then that can allow them to stand in a way that all of these neck problems kind of aren't as important. These posterior thoracic muscles are long. They're having to be kept long all the time, and they're having to be strong. We'll work with them. We're not necessarily going to be trying to lengthen them. We're just going to try to help them chill out. So let's get started. So this is my friend Christina.
Hello.
I've already done some warming up, so the oil that I'm using has kind of sunk in a bit already. And as this happens, it allows me to slow down, letting me get into that more kind of myofascial speed. Once I've warmed up the entire back, down the spine, over here into the shoulders, something that I'll do specifically for posture is I'll change the position of the arms. So I've had my client bring her arms up onto this chair. It's a dinner chair. I don't have a massage chair here at my house. Anyway, I've had her bring her hands up onto this chair. In my office, I like to use an exercise ball because it can move around. The clients can easily reposition it. Or you can just use a stool. Anything that will bring your client's arms up into flexion like this so that their hands are up above their head. Now, when I apply that same pressure that I was applying before, it's going to feel completely different to the client. And it's going to be working with that fascia in a different way. Their fascia is going to be configured differently. And I like to start with some nice bilateral work here, again thinking down toward the table and angled down toward her sacrum. You can of course work all the way down into the low back and hips in this position, and it will indeed feel different. Having the arms up in flexion like this creates a lot of interesting changes in the fascia. So I'm going to do some specific strokes down these spinal erectors here. So these knuckles are right next to the spine. I can apply a comforting hand nearby. I'm not applying a lot of pressure with this other hand, but it's just present to make this seam broader. And it helps me steer my knuckles to make sure that I don't get too close to the spine. I do want to get right near that laminar groove, and I do definitely want to work with that erector spinae, but I don't want to apply those metacarpophalangeal joints, those punching knuckles, to the spinous processes there. So I'll do a few stripping strokes this way. And Christina, go ahead and take some easy deep breaths. As your client takes deep breaths in this position, that's going to change the fascia even further. It's going to cause the ribs to rotate, and it's going to work with all of that fascia that has to do with breathing, that can often get tight as posture gets more and more rounded. And I can do some more specific work up into the trapezius. So up into upper trapezius, I can do one of those myofascial holds using a duck grip. And I can do some stripping using my thumbs, coming up into inferior and mid trapezius. And this is also an excellent position for working with the rotator cuff. So all of these muscles that attach to the scapula over here, they're going to be in a completely different position. And this is going to be a very nice stretch, and it might be too much for some people, so do check in. And of course work along these lateral ribs here. If you can make all these breathing muscles seem more free, then people will by default be able to stand up straighter. And that's really what we want. We want to allow them to be able to stand up straighter, even if it's only temporary, because that's going to give them a new awareness of their posture. So it's not that we're fixing their posture during this session, it's we're creating this freedom that will allow them to stand up straighter for a while, and eventually hopefully make that more permanent. And before I have her flip, I'm going to come into a nice wide stance, and I'm going to bring one knee against the table to take some of my weight, and then I'm going to do some petrissage up into the neck, until finally I'm right at the occipital ridge, so the very lowermost part of the skull, and I'm going to be tractioning just a little bit up. Just a couple pounds of pressure, not much at all. With this other hand, I'm going to do a relatively light stroke down the back. Not a lot of pressure is down toward the table. Most of the pressure is down toward her sacrum. So this is a stretch for that spinal fascia. When I do this move, people get up from the table saying, "I feel an inch taller," and I've always wanted to measure them to see if that's true. If this is an awkward angle for your wrist, consider keeping it more neutral like this, and then bringing it around to the side as you get closer to the sacrum. And now this is where I'll rest for a while. Because a lot of my weight is over here in this left hand, I'm not having to support my own weight using my back very much at all. And as your client continues to breathe, hold this for a while and see if you can feel any softening under your hands. And come out of this gently. Now that I've flipped my client over, I've put a breast draping on. If you'd like to see how I do a breast draping, click over onto my draping video over there. And now, Christina, go ahead and bring your arms up and put them behind your head. So they can either have their arms up above their head like this, or behind their head as if they were lounging. Either way is fine. And now, again, all of this frontline fascia is nice and stretched out. So because I've got this breast draping on, I can work with these lateral ribs here, and I can work a bit with the sternum. So Christina, go ahead and take some easy deep breaths up into your rib cage. So I'm going to apply one hand, a nice broad flat palm, to these lateral ribs, and the other hand I'm going to apply to the sternum. I'm not going to travel too far up with this hand that's on the sternum, but you can go up toward the axilla with this lateral hand. And I'm leaning against the table here. I've got both of my knees and legs up against the table, and my elbow is tucked into my leg, so I'm not really having to use any effort here, and I'm supporting my own weight. And again, from another angle, I'm going to anchor my elbow into my side, and then I'm going to apply the palmar surface of my hand to these lateral ribs here. Conform to the surface of these ribs, and as your client continues to breathe, don't think about moving too much. This should be a relatively static move. You're going to be keeping this fascia in traction as they breathe, and they're going to be doing the massage. And I'm going to use this hand. I'm going to be using these dorsal surfaces of my digits here, coming up onto the sternum. And again, I'm not going to be traveling too far here. I'm not going to be coming up onto the breast tissue. And I'll hold this for 10, maybe 15 breaths. Then I'll come out slowly and I'll repeat on the other side. I'm going to end with some inferior traction of this same tissue I was working with earlier. Christina, go ahead and take some more of those easy deep breaths up into your rib cage. And again, I'm not going too far under the drape. I do want to keep some space between my hands and the breast tissue. But I do want to work with all these attachments of the pecs and all these intercostals and all these breathing muscles. I know I'm not doing a lot of direct pec work here, but I find that working with these broad sheets and having them breathe, they'll stand up, being able to stand taller than if I were to just do a lot of petrissage of this pec tissue, etc., etc. We're going to end with some nice fascial traction up into the occiput. If your fingers can't bend this way, you can use knuckles, or you can just keep your fingers straight. The most important part is this end part, where I'm coming up into the occiput and giving some traction superiorly. And finally, here's a stretch that I wish I could teach everyone in the world because I feel like it would be a happier, healthier place. It's pretty simple, but there are a lot of ways of getting it wrong. So make sure to demonstrate it for your client as you explain it, and then have your client do it so that you can correct their form. So first of all, you clasp your hands behind your back, and then your arms go dead. They don't have to stay straight. The reason why I say that the arms go dead, they don't have to stay straight part, is because if I don't, people will do this stretch, which is a good stretch, but it's a completely different stretch than what we're going for here. So, back to the stretch. Clasp your hands behind your back, and then you bring your shoulder blades together and down. So kind of diagonally back and down. It looks like this. And it'll feel like you're sticking your chest out. And you should feel a stretch right across here, just a very subtle one, not a big one, and that's what we want. So have your clients do this 2 or 3 times. If they're keeping their shoulders hiked like this, tell them, bring your shoulders down. Come out of it, show me again. So make sure that your clients are retracting and depressing their shoulders at the same time. And explain to them that this is a vastly preferable solution to upper back pain than doing this. If you try to come forward and around like that and to stretch those upper back muscles, those are already overstretched. What they want is some slack, which is what this does. And I had them do this just 3 or 4 times, and then continue on with their day, and do this anytime they start to get those aches and pains up there. Let that be a cue for them so that they can make this a regular part of their routine. We're not trying to really stretch this fascia so much as give the nervous system a cue that, hey, I can come out of this forward slouch. It kind of gives them an awareness cue so that they never lose track of where their shoulders are. All right, let me know what you think. Leave me some comments, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.